everybody in. Good evening, social media. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. We're still letting some people in. A good crowd tonight. All right. Welcome, everyone, to VBC Happy Hour from Monday, December 11th. My name is Sean Hall. You know what? I think I realized that I'm playing the music in the background. I'm listening to it, but everybody else can't hear it because I didn't share my music. And that's probably because Todd's back in the States and I had to mess something up before he got back. Todd is back. He just landed a couple hours ago. He said he's going to probably take a nap. So he will not be joining us tonight. Sorry I didn't have the music playing for you all as you entered the room here. But all in all, still happy to have you all here, a part of VBC Happy Hour. And Todd said he will be joining us probably either Thursday night with Glenn's upcoming program or next Monday, which we will get to in just a few short minutes. Tonight, we have Arthur Wiknik joining us to talk about his book, Nonsense. Arthur, if you want to wave, say hello.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome to the program, Arthur. We'll be getting to you in just a little bit here. I will actually share my screen so that I can thank our sponsors. Remember to do that at least. So here we are. We have Tobacco-Free Adagio Health. We usually thank them at the top of our program because they've been a longtime supporter of the VBC. And we are very thankful for that. Tobacco-Free Adagio Health is dedicated to reducing and preventing tobacco use and to getting the word out about the hazards of smoking and secondhand smoke. They are all about health, so they want people to quit. And they do that through classes, nicotine replacement therapy, and a popular quit line, 1-800-QUIT-NOW. They also educate people, children especially, about tobacco use from cigarettes, cigars, pipes, chews, snuff, and other nicotine products like vaping. And finally, they advocate for public and private policies that ensure healthy places to live, work, and play. You can learn everything there is to know about Tobacco-Free Adagio Health on their website, tobaccofree.adagiohealth.org. Let me pop over to here, and we are going to say, also, we have a VBC magazine. If you are joining us for the first time, we have a free quarterly magazine that we like to send out to everybody. If you don't get it, it's because we don't have your address. All you have to do is send that to either myself, Sean, S-H-A-U-N, you can see it there on my screen, at veteransbreakfastclub.org, or Todd, T-O-D-D, at veteransbreakfastclub.org. Go ahead and send us your address. We'll make sure you get the free quarterly magazine. It's 31 pages of veteran stories, and highly reviewed, I will say. Nothing official. It's not like, we're getting reviews from the New York Times, but everybody we hear from says, this is a great magazine. So make sure that you get a copy and then tell your friends to get copies. And it also makes a really good holiday gift for your wife, obviously. Why not? Also, we have the Lioness podcast. This is a podcast hosted by a good friend of ours, Daria Summers, and an original Lioness Army veteran. Her name is Shannon Morgan. Shannon, let me make sure that people are getting into the room here. We have several more people joining us. All right. So Lioness, the Origin Story podcast, it is all about the women who were serving post 9/11. So a lot of the Lionesses, that was created by the Army. They served in Iraq. It was because men couldn't frisk and search women and children. So they got attached. And that's a key word. They got attached. Women got attached to these units going outside of the wire to help search women and children. Well, this was also during the time of the combat exclusion policy. Women were not allowed in combat, but they left the wire. So what happened? They got into combat. The Marines took this idea. They created the female engagement teams, the FETs, and then they kind of evolved that into cultural support teams, the CSTs. Our podcast covers all three of those groups, Lionesses, FETs, and CSTs, because as the combat exclusion policy was removed, these women were not given credit for the combat that they were involved in. And we have had many members of all those on. We've had the original captain on from the Army who created the Lioness team. And I just edited, and we'll be releasing tomorrow, the episode that features the two women that helped bring litigation against DoD to remove the combat exclusion policy. A really good episode, if I do say so myself. So I hope that you take a listen to it, the Lioness podcast. It's filled with incredible stories that I think that you will thoroughly enjoy here. I want to make sure that everybody's getting in the room. Usually we hear a nice little ding in our ear whenever people are joining, and want to make sure people are getting in. Okay. We also have the Scuttlebutt podcast. Most recently, we released the episode with Pat D'Amico. He joined us a couple weeks ago for the Guantanamo Bay program here on Monday night. He has his own organization where he coaches leaders of Fortune 500 companies. He's a really great guy, very positive, very interesting story from him about his service, and talked a lot about what leadership means to him, how he's able to develop better and more complete leaders for the organizations and companies that he works for. You can also see there in the bottom right, I just completed editing for Emily Bleeker's episode, which will come out next Monday. She wrote When We Were Enemies. This is a historical nonfiction book. I did have a question about this, Glenn. Did you know that there was an Italian POW camp in the United States in Indiana during World War II?
I didn't know it was in Indiana, but I knew there were Italian POWs in the United States. Yes.
So Emily Bleeker, she sort of has a slight family history with this Italian POW camp that was in Indiana. She's written, this is now her 7th novel of When We Were Enemies, and she uses that historical knowledge of the Italian POW camp to create a dual timeline novel. And our publisher got in touch with me, said, hey, we'd love to be on the podcast. Has some level of veteran and military topic within it. So her and I had a really great conversation about how she started into writing, what it has meant to her. She actually had cancer at a younger age, which sort of forced her to say, I'm going to focus on the thing that I love the most, which is writing. And within 8 years, she's written 7 novels. She has another one planned for next year. But she came on to talk about When We Were Enemies. Look for that episode next Monday.
Excellent.
We have breaking news here, live from VBC. Breaking news. Don Miller. Glenn, I don't want to break it. You go ahead and break it. It's such exciting news.
Well, Don Miller, author of Masters of the Air from 10, 12 years ago when he published the book, Professor Dr. Don Miller, we should say, at Lafayette University, well-known historian, and he's become a well-known World War II historian, has agreed to be on our program next Monday night at 7 o'clock on VBC Greatest Generation Live. I'm sort of bubbling over with excitement because this is the book on which the upcoming miniseries on Apple is going to be based, Masters of the Air. In fact, the other night, he, with one of the Apple executive producers, was at the World War II Museum in New Orleans and did a live broadcast on the making of Masters of the Air, which I've watched about half of. I couldn't watch it live because it was Saturday night at 8 o'clock or something, and I had some family obligations, but I've been in the process of watching it, recorded. And just really fortunate. He's a very nice man, at least by email so far. All I did was email him at Lafayette College. And he answered me the next day, said, hey, give me a week or two to figure out a time. And then I emailed him again today, and he said, how about next Monday? Done. So, yeah, really excited. This will be a great sort of kickoff for the Masters of the Air series that we're going to be starting in late January when the actual television episodes begin to be broadcast. So,
I'm super excited for this because if you've watched the most recent trailer for Masters of the Air, there was spared no expense on this production. It's that same level that you got with Band of Brothers and what you got with the Pacific is now also Masters of the Air. I'm
sorry, go ahead, Sean.
No, go ahead. I was gonna say it looks incredible.
Yeah, and even more so. I mean, it's hard to believe it, but Band of Brothers is now 22 years ago, right? And the Pacific about 10, I think, or so years ago. And you can tell that with this being an 8th Air Force story and all these battles that occur in the air, they've used the latest graphics, the latest artificial intelligence techniques, etc., to make this look real, like it's actually happening. So yeah, those trailers are sort of really fantastic.
I talked in my recent Scuttlebutt with Paul Woodage, who's the historian who lives in Normandy and leads tours there. We talked on that podcast about the air superiority coming at Normandy, and we talked a bit about how our mind can't comprehend that number of planes and the noise and just like the power that was coming at that spot. And both of us were sort of in awe that if we could step back in time to see this actually happen, that it would have been a sight to behold.
So I have been rereading this book probably for about the 3rd time. And while that's absolutely perfectly true and looking forward to that part of it, the first half to 2/3 of the book focuses on the first year or so of the 8th Air Force, and specifically what's called the Bloody 100, the 100th Bomber Group. And that first year or so in mid-42 through 43 was exactly that, a bloody time. The percentage casualties, the percentage of planes shot down, et cetera, were horrific. So that superiority in 1944 was bought at the expense of a lot of men in 1943.
Good point. And a question from yes, Wolfram Forster. We will politely ask him if he's able to switch, only because Don Miller was, he asked about next Monday. So I figure if we can't get him later, we want to get him now, because once Masters of the Air comes out, his schedule might be a little packed.
Yeah, I'm just pickled pink that he could fit us in with, such just a couple of emails. Really happy. But if I could promote, I don't know if you have the slide there. Also, this Thursday, I'm on pins and needles for this Thursday's program on the 14th.
Maybe I don't have that, but I can pull it up here.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Which is another doctor. I get to interview all these PhDs. Sometimes it scares the hell out of me how smart these people are. But Dr. Bob Ballard, the famous, the legendary marine archaeologist, the founder of the Titanic in 1985. I was just reading some excerpts from his book, Deep Dive, about that. And then, of course, he goes on. I mean, he's an oceanographer, a scientist first, but he goes on to find the Lusitania, the Bismarck, the Yorktown, lost at the Battle of Midway, many of the ships that were lost around Guadalcanal, PT-109, et cetera, et cetera. So through his nephew, Jeff Ballard, who's been a great friend of ours on BBC Greatest Generation Live, we've been able to arrange for him to be on the program Thursday evening. So should be a very interesting evening.
Knocking it out of the park, Glenn. So thank you.
Well, I am the ultimate of lucky.
And we have Arthur Wiknik joining us tonight. So the hits just keep on coming here, because the level of guests that we've been able to bring on to VBC over the course of this whole year in 2023 is really quite astounding. The number of stories we've heard from every branch, every era, the specials that we've had, the anniversary episodes we've had, just something really to, I think, hang our hat on. I want to give ourselves a little pat on the back. Brad, your 2 weeks, 3 weeks that we held those anniversaries a couple of months ago. It's just been really quite wonderful. So for those of you who are joining us for the very first time, Veterans Breakfast Club, we've been around 15 years. We hold this Zoom program every Monday night. We're bringing on, as you see, historians, authors. We're bringing on veterans such as Arthur tonight to talk about their experiences in Vietnam. It's every Monday. And we also do in-person breakfast here in the Pittsburgh region and in and around the area. As I mentioned earlier, Executive Director Todd DiPastino, he just got back from leading a tour in Vietnam. And our mission is creating communities of listening around veterans and their stories to connect, educate, heal, and inspire. A really great mission, definitely a mission that brought me to the organization and keeps me keeps me going, keeps me getting up in the morning. I see a Paul here, but I know that you guys just got married. I want to say congratulations to you both, because Don Nemchek let us know that this wedding happened, and I'm just over the moon for you both. Congratulations on your nuptials.
Oh, thank you very much. It's been great.
Yeah, special day.
Mhm.
Yes, we did. We're both veterans, so.
Yeah. You know me, Sean. I was Debbie Boniora.
Yes.
Yeah. Now I'm Debbie Markham.
Well, that's wonderful news. It's so great to see you both here joining us. You only got married just a couple days ago. Why aren't you in Maui or?
Well,
we got Florida dot. We were in Daytona.
Yeah. Well, excellent.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, well, thank you so much for spending the time with us, for coming on. Can you give us maybe your favorite part of your wedding day? What was the best part?
Oh, I can't tell my favorite part. This is a family channel.
Oh my goodness.
Just seeing her walk down the aisle towards me. And she was happy that I showed up.
Well, that's great. Thank you again. Thank you guys for spending some of your special week with us here. I'm going to pop over here to our special guest for this evening, Arthur Wiknik. Arthur, it's a pleasure. I just asked you to unmute. We'll get you unmuted here.
Sure. Can you hear me all right?
We can hear you. Let's go ahead and highlight you here as a speaker. Arthur, thanks for your patience as we get through all of our wonderful announcements that we always do. How are you doing this evening?
Fine, thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us again, everyone. Arthur is the author of Nonsense, which I love this title. I want to get into this title later, why you decided to name it Nonsense. But figure we can dive in a little bit here. You were 101st Airborne in Vietnam. You are from where in Connecticut?
Higginham, Connecticut.
Higginham.
It's a very small town, one traffic light, that kind of a place.
So small town guy. You grew up there, so you're a hometown guy. Lead us through sort of your early years. What you were drafted 1968?
In May 7th, 1968, I was drafted. And I thought that was the end of my world because I had just gotten a job at a aircraft company. I was actually making more money than my father. And I had a girlfriend that I was crazy about. I had bought a brand new 1968 Camaro, which I still have. And, that was all going to be put on hold while I was in the Army.
Got your draft notice here. Did you know you were going to be drafted? Did you go to the board and say, when is my number being called?
No, I wanted them to come and get me. And that's pretty much what they did. But a lot of my friends from high school were drafted as well, because back in those days, a lot of parents could not afford to send their kids to college. And we also did not have any connections with any political people. So it was pretty much the way it was, in the late 1960s.
Tell me a bit about those early years of your life. What did your father do? What did your parents do?
Well, my father was a factory worker. My mother was an LPN at a hospital close by. And I grew up in a farming community where we had, a small pond for ice skating and swimming. There was a lot of hay fields around, so we would play softball in the summer and go sledding in the winter. It was a pretty much ideal childhood.
Was it anywhere in your thoughts that you were going to get drafted? What did you think of the Army at that time?
Well, when I was a senior in high school, one of the classmates had quit. Back in those days, some kids quit high school after 10th grade. And he joined the Army, went to Vietnam, and unfortunately he was killed. He was a medic. So that kind of brought it home that, this is a situation that a lot of us were aware of. So I wasn't really thinking about being drafted, but as the war revved up, after high school, I decided to go to a technical school. It was a 2-year technical school, but like most young men, I hated academics. So I did 1 year, left that technical school, and shortly after that, I got my draft notice.
So in 1968, you're drafted. You go to basic. What's basic like for you?
Basic at Fort Dix. It wasn't too bad because Fort Dix, New Jersey, was only a couple hundred miles from home. So after the first 4 weeks, I believe, I was able to have my parents come down and visit me and see what was going on. It was kind of difficult at first. What I thought was interesting was some of the young men that I served with that were also draftees, that they came from so many different backgrounds. There was a few young men that were given the option of jail time or the Army. Mm-hmm. So I had to share bunks with those kind of guys. So you had to be real careful who you get friendly with.
Was it a bit of a culture shock for you?
Not really, because I used to stay overnight a lot at my cousin's house, and they'd come over here. So it wasn't that being away from home was a total shock, but being away from home at such a long period of time was kind of difficult. And also the environment where now I'm under total control of my drill sergeants, that was kind of tough.
Mm-hmm. Betsy brought up an interesting question, which Ben did respond to here in the chat. Arthur, did you have a draft number?
Yes.
Okay, because Ben even said the draft numbers came in 69 for the first lottery.
Well, no, I didn't have. No, I was not part of that of the lottery. I wasn't part of that.
But you still had a number?
Well, I have on my. If you look at my draft notice, there's a number on there.
We'll bring that up here. So it says selective service number 6648836.
Correct.
What is that? What did that number signify? I mean, I'm talking for somebody with no experience.
I haven't got the slightest idea what it means. But I guess I was. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was given also a serial number, which was US 52725533. That's a number I can never forget. That was my assigned ID number. The guys who joined the Army had an RA in front of their number, which stood for regular Army. The US, I'm not sure what the significance of that was.
Glenn, you have your hand up?
Well, just on that draft number, I'm a bit younger. Not too often I get to say that. That feels real good. I'll say it again. I'm a bit younger. So I turned 18 in 1971. And what I recall is I got a draft number at that time. And I think they began picking those draft numbers 66, 67. Maybe someone else would recall that, because I remember my draft number very well. And it was like 280 something. So I was kind of pleased at that time. By that time, of course, the war was winding down dramatically. So anyway, I'm just guessing that that's what it is.
Well, I believe you're talking about the lottery, which the lottery I think began shortly after I was drafted.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. So lottery draft number, is that the same thing, I think?
Not what I had.
Not what you had. Okay.
So Michael also put in RA, regular Army, US draftee, and ER, enlisted reservist. But also, Ken Kazak, he brought up a very interesting question, because that sort of leads to my next question, because you were trained as an NCO, Arthur, but Ken asked, dropping out of technical school, did that make you more draft friendly?
Yeah, of course it did. One of the things that when I first got to Fort Dix is we were asked to fill out what we call the dream sheet. What kind of background do you have? What kind of education do you have? And the dream sheet is not really the proper name. It's some kind of form. So I put down that what I wanted to be was a chaplain's assistant, because I figured that'd be a nice, safe job to have. You know, I'd have God protecting me. So I go before an interviewer, and he looks at my form and he says, okay, chaplain's assistant. He asked me if I had any seminary training, and I said no. And then he asked me if I plan on taking seminary training after the military. I said no. He says, okay, well, you can't be a chaplain's assistant then. And so as a joke, for the next item, I put down pastry chef. And so he asked me the same set of questions. Did I have any culinary training? No. Well, do you plan on taking culinary training after the Army? I told him no. So he said, guess what? You're going in the infantry. So, I ended up, after basic training, I was sent to Fort Polk, Louisiana for advanced infantry training. And we took a lot of aptitude tests and did a lot of weapons training. And I always scored well on that. And so shortly after that, after AIT was completed, I was approached and asked if I wanted to go to NCO school because they thought I would make a good small unit leader when I got to Vietnam. And I told them I didn't want to be a leader. I just want to be a follower. Just, send me where you got to send me. But I was informed then that the NCO training takes 6 months, and I would be in stateside for another 6 months. So I figured, hey, anything can happen. The war could end, or there could be a lot of drawdowns, withdrawals. So I figured I'll take it. I'll go to NCO school, which I did, and that was at Fort Benning, Georgia, was the first part of that training, and then after that, I did a on-the-job training at Fort Gordon, Georgia.
Why did you stand out as someone that they thought would make a good leader?
Because I'm a great leader.
Were you born with it, or is it something that you developed after you went in?
I'm not sure what. I think maybe the scoring on the aptitude test was one thing, and I wasn't afraid to take charge of different details that we had. If we had especially at Fort Benning, Georgia, there was the barracks we were in were heated by coal. And somebody had to go down there and always shovel the coal in, and nobody wanted to get up in the middle of the night and do that. I'd get up and do it, just for something to do. And I guess that stood out.
Sort of going above and beyond in a way.
Yeah, slightly.
How did you feel about the evolution of your training? Because going from basics, AIT, NCO, did it feel like there was a natural progression to where you needed to get to before you got to Vietnam?
Absolutely, because after basic training was just learning basic skills, learning rudimentary weapons training. AIT was we did a lot of map reading, called in artillery. We did some air support, and so that was very interesting. NCO school was even more intense than that. We did a lot of first aid. Small unit leadership, learning how to deal with different personalities, a lot of intense map reading. That was the big thing. And I thought the NCO school was actually pretty good. And one of the things I did notice is there was guys who just couldn't cope with it. And some of them were dropped out of the NCO program and were sent on to some other assignments. But I finished it. I came out as a Sergeant E5, which was the dismay of a lot of the old timers or the veterans, because here I am, I'm an E5. I had less than a year of service, and it takes them anywhere from 4 to 5 years to achieve that rank. So guys like us were known as instant NCOs or shake and bake sergeants.
Was that like a derogatory term?
Oh, yes, absolutely. No, that was kind of an insult. But the Army gave me an opportunity, so I took it.
When you were being shipped out, did you have any time with your family before you left?
Oh yes, yeah. I think I had a 14-day leave, and probably the hardest thing to do was to leave home. Because even though I was stateside most of the time, I was able to come home occasionally on weekends, so that wasn't too bad. But now I'm going to be gone for a year. I'm going to a place where it was early '69, and at that time we were losing anywhere from 200 to 300 killed each week. So my parents were pretty upset about that I'd be going to a place like that. In fact, one of the things that my mother did when we were at the airport, I was getting ready to get on the plane to leave. She pulled me over to the side and opened up her pocketbook. It was full of 50s and $100 bills. She said to me, if you want, I'll put you on a different plane. I'll send you to Canada and I'll send you money every month. And,
Wow.
Yeah.
and I couldn't do it. Give me a second here.
Yeah.
That was very difficult because my mother was so concerned, but she was willing to do that. But since other friends of mine, classmates, people from my town had already been drafted and served in Vietnam or were currently serving in Vietnam, I could not, I didn't want to be the coward to run away. So I went.
Wow. So you get on the plane, you start the long trip over.
Yeah, that was that trip over. Well, I went to. I ended up at Fort Lewis, Washington. That was the area where we that was the post that we went to for the final leg of our journey before we were sent to Vietnam. That plane ride from Fort Polk to I think we went to Guam was our first stop. It was a large plane. There must have been 200 or 300 guys on the plane. Nobody spoke. We were all like in a trance that we felt like we were going off to our death. And unfortunately for some people they were, but it was a very subdued atmosphere. Nobody talking, people just looking out the window. And you didn't know anybody. That was a tough part. So it really didn't, because we were sent over as individuals, and that made it even harder. Today, you train as a unit, you serve as a unit, and you come home as a unit. In those days, we went over as individuals. It was very difficult.
I didn't realize that. That, you know, in all the years we've been talking, I don't know if I ever realized that. Even hearing it, I had never sort of thought like, oh yeah, you guys were going over there as individuals. Even the ones that were landing on commercial flights were getting in there as individuals and then sort of attached to a unit. Did you try to make any sort of connection with the guys that you were going with, or was it just sort of like solemn?
No, it was pretty solemn because no one knew exactly where they were going to end up. And, you know, there was all kinds of different people on the plane. There was, you know, from different MOSs. Some guys were armor people, some were infantry, some were radio operators, some were clerks. It was every, you know, it was all different types of MOSs.
Do you remember the like what type of flight did you go over on? Was it military or commercial?
No, it was a commercial plane.
Commercial.
And go ahead.
We've had on some of the stewardesses who worked for Pan Am at the time, who went over and served the gentlemen that were flying over. Do you happen to remember any of them?
Well, I don't remember the stewardesses, but on the way to Vietnam, they didn't interest me at all. But when we came home, we could talk about that later. I couldn't keep my eyes off of them because you know these are what we call round-eyed women, and of course they're all very attractive. And after being in the jungle for a year, these girls look pretty good.
So you get into Vietnam. What's your first experience landing there?
Well, I was on the right-hand side of the plane. I'm looking out the window as we're coming into Cam Ranh Bay. And I see jungle, and I see some open areas, and there was some destroyed armor. I don't know if it was tanks or APCs. And I'm thinking, my God, we're landing in the jungle. Are they going to pass out weapons? You know, what's going to happen to us? I didn't realize that on the left side of the plane, it was Cam Ranh Bay. It was a beautiful place. It was white silver sands, palm trees, grass huts. It was, you know. So I was just on the wrong side of the plane looking out the window, and I was scared out of my wits. But when we landed on the tarmac and the plane, you know, taxied around, and I was able to look out the other side of the window, I said, wow, this place isn't that bad. Until I opened the door and all that heat came in and the humidity. I couldn't believe how hot it was because I went over in early April. So, you know, we still had frosty nights here in Connecticut. You get over there and it's 95 or 100 degrees and high humidity. It was quite a contrast.
I guess getting over there as an individual, I'm trying to sort of like imagine landing, and then how did you know where to go? Who did you know where to talk to? Does it feel kind of like a cluster when you first get there?
Well, there's a couple of NCOs standing there. When you get off the plane, you have your paperwork with you, and they direct you to different clerks that will go through your paperwork. And I didn't have an assignment yet. I didn't have a place I was going. I didn't even know where I was going to go. And then once we cleared our paperwork, one of the clerks or a sergeant had us line up. All the NCOs got to one side, and they just went right down the line. You, and you, 101st Airborne. You, First Cav. And I said, wait a minute, I'm not jump qualified. Why would I go in 101st Airborne? And he says, because they have a shortage of NCOs, and that's where you're going. So that's how I got that assignment.
Did you know anything about the 101st before?
No, almost nothing, other than they were, other than the Normandy invasion, that the 101st Airborne was, had that long history. But, and I know they were, parachutists, but that was about it. I didn't know much about them.
So when do you make your way? When did you know you were heading up that way?
Well, now Cameron Bay is in the southern part of the country, and so they had the 101st Airborne had what they call Screaming Eagle Replacement Training School, CERTS, and that's where I was sent to, because when you come out of an environment like stateside and go to Vietnam, you got to get climatized. Like I said, I came out of an environment where we had frosty nights, and now here I am in 100-degree temperatures. So I spent a week, and it was outside of Phu Bai. I forget the name of the town, but anyhow, they had this training school, and the idea of it was to get you used to the heat and the humidity. So we spent a week doing that.
Terry Swank asked, how were you received as a replacement?
Well, see, I didn't get to my unit yet. So one of the first people who approached me was a guy who was being reassigned. He was a Spec 4, Specialist 4. And he took one look at me and he says, are you a shake and bake sergeant? And I said, well, yeah, I am. He says, well, guess what? When you get to your unit, you better keep your eyes open, because your own men may shoot you in the back because they're not looking for instant NCOs to lead them. So when he told me that, I said, what the heck am I in for? What kind of problems am I going to have when I get to my unit? So that guy kind of scared me. Maybe he did it on purpose. I don't know. But it was kind of discerning.
Absolutely. When did you get to meet? Wait, here, I have an older picture here of you. Here we are. I was is that Fort Benning?
Right. Yes. That was in October of 68.
All of 19?
I was 19 or 20. I think I was 19 years old there.
I added this slide into your deck here. This is sort of where you got up to Phu Bai, and then a little more north. Was that I Corps?
That's I Corps, yes.
When did you get up into this region?
Well, after I spent a week at the training school, I was sent to Camp Evans, which is right outside of between Phu Bai and Quang Tri, a little village called Phuong Dien. And so I got there. I was issued a rifle and all my equipment, and then the very next day I was sent out to the field to join my unit. So that's Camp Evans, what you see right there.
That's pretty massive.
It is. It was probably a good square mile. They had an airstrip there, a hospital, a movie theater. They had some amenities, but no flush toilets. And the only electricity we had came from generators. But I didn't spend much time there. Most of my time was spent in the jungle.
So sorry, you mentioned how soon after you got there were you sent out?
The next day. I got there. I reported into the company clerk, and he sent me to the supply room where the supply sergeant assigned me a rifle, rucksack, ammunition, grenades, everything that I needed, canteens, extra pair of socks. That was the one thing everybody always had, an extra pair of socks.
Mm-hmm. Glenn asked, did you qualify as a paratrooper?
No, I did not. I never jumped. And the 101st never jumped over there as far as I know.
Mm-hmm. Did you have men underneath, that you were leading in that first time out into the jungle?
That I was leading?
Yeah.
Well, actually, when I got there, I won't say I wasn't welcomed, but the lieutenant, who was what do they call him, a maverick, I believe, or I forgot what they call him. He used to be an NCO, and then he went to OCS and became a lieutenant. He was the first lieutenant. He was our platoon leader. So he called my squad together because they didn't have a sergeant at the time. And he said, "Oh, here's Sergeant Wiknik. He just came in from the NCO school. He's the guy who got the allocation for the sergeant position that one of you guys would have had." So, I mean, what the heck? This guy was trying to set me up. And so these guys were going to take an instant dislike for me. I didn't know what the heck to do. So what I did is I got everybody together.
A Mustanger.
A Mustang, that's it. He was a Mustang.
A Mustangier? There's a couple in the chat. Rick and Brad. Mustanger, Mustangier.
Mustang, yeah.
Mustang.
So what I did is I got everybody together and I said, look, I'm not here to win any medals. I'm not here to win to try to win the war. I just want everybody to be safe, go home in one piece. And so they kind of like, yeah, all right, whatever. And I just got there. So, these are guys that have been there for 4, 5, or 6 months. So they kind of know the routine. They know what to do. And me being the new guy, it was hard, especially that I was put in a leadership position right off the bat.
How did you gain trust in that situation? How do you sort of take command in that way? I mean, so it has to take some level of time.
Well, fortunately or unfortunately, I was only there for, I was in the field for only maybe 3 weeks. And what had happened is there was a big battle going on out in the Ashaw Valley, which was near the Laotian border. It was later known as Hamburger Hill. And our unit was called in to take part of that. And I don't know if anybody's familiar with Hamburger Hill. It started on May 10th of 1969. And every day, the 3rd of the 187th of the 101st Airborne was trying to assault this mountain. And every day they were pushed back by the North Vietnamese because they were dug in so well. So with each unsuccessful assault on our side, they'd bring in another company. And by the time we got there, there was almost 700 of us involved with this battle to surround the base of the hill. So we were all sent there to Hamburger Hill. I had not seen any action at all. Where we were outside of Camp Evans, we did some light patrols, and the only thing we had to contend with was booby traps and some villagers that would come around looking for food, or a guy on a little Lambretta with a prostitute, wanted to know if we want to take any time with her. So that's the only thing we contended with. So we get to the base of Hamburger Hill, and there's hundreds of GIs everywhere. So we were told to not take any equipment with us other than our rifle, our ammunition, 1 canteen of water, and a bayonet. So our instructions were, we're going to keep our bayonets on all the time, and if you had to engage in hand-to-hand combat, that's what the bayonet was for, and that we were going to assault the hill the very next day, and we're not going to take any prisoners. So these are 2 commands that I thought were pretty unnerving, especially for me, because I hadn't seen any action yet. Kill anything that moves and you may have to stab somebody to death with your bayonet. So this was something I was not looking forward to. So anyhow, we were positioned. We were sent to an area along the base of the mountain, and again, not told to bring anything with us. No food, no personal items. Leave our rucksacks behind. But one thing I did is I brought a can of peaches along, because once we attacked this mountain, I wanted to have something to eat. So we get into position, and it took so long to get into our position and all the other companies to get into their position that they put off the final assault for another day. So we had to set up for the night at the base of the mountain. And during the night, the NVA, North Vietnamese Army, they had fires going up on the hill, and they were banging on metal, I don't know, pans or something, and they'd be yelling down at us. So it was one of those situations where the enemy knew where we were, we knew where the enemy was, and they were just up there waiting for us to try it again. So there was no activity around us that night, other than the noises coming from the mountain. In the morning, we had to pull guard naturally. In the morning, we were told to get ready for the final assault. There's going to be an artillery barrage before we go up on the hill. And so I opened up my can of peaches because I was hungry now, because we spent the night out there. And I started eating the peaches, and my guys are looking at me, and I figured somebody else must have brought some food too, but nobody did. So they're all looking at me. Hey, Wiknik, how about running the peaches? Well, I look in the can, and I got like 3 peaches left. I go, there's not enough here for everybody. So they said, keep them, you eat them. So here I am. I'm their new squad leader. I set this terrible example of not sharing by eating in front of everybody. So now I'm thinking, crap, what's going to happen to me when I get out there now? These guys going to keep an eye on me, or are they going to just let me go? So I'm giving you the long version of this, but it all plays together.
No, please continue.
So after the artillery barrage, which lasted a good hour or so, we were put online. Everybody was put online and told to assault. So and put down suppressive fire. So as we get out into the open now, we were in the jungle where there was not much. Artillery did not obliterate any of the area we were in. But as soon as we broke out of the jungle, we get into this area of Hamburger Hill, and I think there's a photo of it somewhere on that PowerPoint. It looked like a World War I battlefield. There was no vegetation. Yeah, you can take a look at that. That's what it looked like. And so we broke out onto that. We put down suppressive fire. So everybody's firing at the mountain, and I can't distinguish if there's any fire coming back at us. So guys are crawling around, firing at the hill. And I'm not gonna use up all my bullets, because I don't know what the heck they're shooting at. I don't see anybody shooting back. I don't see any puffs of smoke. I don't see anything. So these guys are crawling, getting into bomb craters. I'm kind of like walking around because I don't know what the heck I'm doing. And I noticed on the ground around me that the ground started bubbling, and I didn't know what that was. I thought it was some kind of geological phenomenon because of all the bombing. Well, then I realized those are bullets coming in, because I'm the only one out there standing up. And the enemy was up there firing at me because I was an easy target, but there was so much fire going back at them that no one was able to get a good beat on me. So after that, now I'm crawling on the ground because I realized that there's still enemy soldiers up there alive. So I crawl into a bomb crater, and I'm looking for a target. I don't see a target. So I crawl over into another bomb crater, and I finally see some puffs of smoke, and I see a little bit of movement. So I just raise up my M16 and let off a full burst of 18 rounds. Get back down, put in another magazine, get up, let off another full burst. And I did it a third time. So, and I was kind of repetitious. So whoever was up there, the third time I popped up, suddenly something blinded me. I didn't know what the heck happened, but it hurt. It stung. And when I reached up to protect my eyes, something hit me in the chest and knocked me backwards. So now I knew I was hit. I just didn't know how bad I was. And I didn't know what the heck was in my face. So I laid there for a few minutes, or not minutes, but a few seconds. And my chest hurts, my eyes are stinging. And I figured this is the end of me. This is where I'm going to die, right here. And so I'm laying there waiting, but the pain was getting worse. And I thought if you're going to die, that the pain would go away, but it wasn't. So I started rubbing my eyes and I could see a little bit. And I looked down at my chest and I'm on fire. So there's flames coming out of my bandoliers. I had all these bandoliers of M16 ammo wrapped around me. So I beat out the fire. And what had happened is every time I popped up, there was an enemy soldier up there who must have seen me, and he fired down at me. And his first round came in and hit the dirt in front of my face, and that's what blasted the dirt in my eyes. And when I exposed myself, he shot me in the chest with a tracer, and it landed in my equipment and started on fire. So if I didn't get that fire out, I would have exploded. So now I knew this is serious. This is real. I got to get the hell out of this position. I looked over. I saw my men kind of strung out on the left of me, and I also noticed that there was a little bit of shrubbery and some boulders that might have given us cover. So I ran over to that area. I yelled to the guys, "Follow me. We're going up this way." And I took off and went up the hill. And my adrenaline just ran up there because I wanted to take the objective. So I'm running up the hill. I'm jumping over abandoned enemy positions. There's equipment laying around. I finally get all the way up to the top, and I turn around to tell the guys, "This is where we're going to set up." And when I looked, there was nobody there. Nobody followed me. They just let me go. So now all that adrenaline now had drained out of me, and I can't move. So I got down as low as I could. I got behind a stump, and I waited. And I was hoping no enemy soldier would spot me because I didn't have any strength to hardly lift up my weapon. Within I would say 10 or 15 minutes, the battle started to die down, and I noticed more and more GIs were working their way up the hill. And I had been rested enough where I could stand up, and I flashed the peace sign, and it was my guys. They're coming up now. So they flashed the peace sign back. And as they got close to me, they looked at me. He says, "Gee, Sergeant Wiknik, what happened to you?" Well, I didn't realize what I looked like. I had a big burn mark in my chest, and I looked like Alice Cooper because I had all this, or a raccoon because I had all this dirt in my eyes, and I got it all out of me. So I figured this was my one opportunity to show them what I could do. And I said, "Listen, you guys, I told you to follow me. Nobody followed me. I had to take the side of the hill by myself." So they didn't realize it. I was scared. I wasn't brave, but they figured I was either very brave or very crazy. So after that, I had no problem with these guys. Everybody said, "Hey, Sergeant Wiknik, he'll do anything. The guy's nuts. You got to, you don't know what he's going to do next." So for the rest of my tour, I had no trouble at all with the guys following my directions. I was their leader now. They trusted me.
You had to do something
absolutely
with no sense to
right.
gain it.
So, but to finish the story, I asked them, "Why the hell didn't you guys follow me? I told you this was a way to get up here." And they're all kind of like shrugging their shoulders and thinking, "Yeah, I guess we should have." And then one of them says, "Well, you know what? You didn't share your peaches with us." So, so we had a good laugh over that, and after that, I was golden.
So you guys have this moment, and this battle's still going on, isn't it?
Well, it died down quite a bit. There was occasional gunfire in different areas and explosions. There was a lot of helicopters flying around, firing the backside of the mountain where a lot of the enemy soldiers were running back towards the Laotian border. The gunships were firing at them. So right now you see that sign that says Hamburger Hill, and that was if anybody saw the movie Hamburger Hill, at the end of the movie, they get a sign that said, "Welcome to Hamburger Hill." Well, that wasn't the real sign. This is the real sign.
I want to jump back just real quick because I just wanted to kind of let you fly with that story. But thinking about like that night prior, and then you were delayed another, 24 hours before you guys could start this assault. I can't imagine that you slept much, that it must have been agonizing during that time.
Actually, it was. And a lot of the guys who had already been in action, but most of the things they had to contend with were small ambushes or, booby traps or 1 or 2 snipers, that kind of thing. It wasn't a big major operation like this. So you can tell the guys had a certain look about them. Their eyes almost spoke to you because they said, this is bad. And they didn't come out and say that verbally, but their face said it.
Do you know how many men were lost that day that you got that you're?
That day, one from our company was killed, and I don't know how many other were killed that day. Several were wounded, but overall, the battle cost around 70, maybe 75 lives and over 300 wounded on our side. But the estimates were that we killed over 600 enemy soldiers. I don't know where they came up with that estimate, but those are the totals that I read about.
Yeah. Were you in this picture, or was this just provided?
No, that's not me. That area right there is called the lower LZ. This is where the wounded were brought in. This is where our supplies were brought in. One thing I thought that's interesting about this photo is nobody's carrying a rifle. They're all up against that tree on the left-hand side of the photo.
We're here.
So I'd like to go back to my story about sharing the peaches, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So once the battle was over, and we were sent back to a Firebase Airborne, which was in the Ashaw Valley on a mountaintop. And once we got there, what I had done is I wrote a letter to my mother, and I asked her to send me something to drink, because the only thing I was drinking was rice paddy water that was made drinkable with a purification tablet, or we're drinking out of little streams. And I saw that some guys had powdered lemonade, they had hot chocolate, some people had coffee, but I had nothing. So I wrote to my mother, I asked her to send me anything that I can drink besides water. So she sent me a little can of apple juice from a company up in New Hampshire. So on that can had an address on it of the name of the company and the address. So I wrote them a letter, and I asked them how much for a case of apple juice. I want to buy it for my guys because I want to share it with them. I want to show these guys that I can share. I'm capable of sharing. So I sent this letter off. Takes about a week to get back to the States. And another week goes by, and what shows up is a case of apple juice. And in there was a letter from the company and says, "Hey, we support you guys in Vietnam. Here's a free case of apple juice. Share it with your guys." So I did. So I gave everybody a couple cans of apple juice, and they thought that was pretty cool. And so now I'm thinking, gee, I wonder what else I could get. So on this fire base, guys are getting their little care packages from home, and we had a little garbage area that we threw all of our wrappings and things. So when nobody was looking, I went over there and I picked through the garbage, and I wrote down names of companies and addresses that had an address on the wrapping. And so I sent another letter out to another company. I said, "Oh, here I am in Vietnam. My mother sent me some of your product. How much for a case or a gross or whatever the item was." And 2 weeks later, I get a case of, I think the next thing I got was canned blackberries or some crazy thing. And with the same kind of a letter. Says, "We don't want any money. We support you guys." So now I had a real gimmick going here.
This was going to get you through the year.
Actually, it worked great. Every 2 weeks, I sent another letter out from my list of products that I was able to get names off the wrappers. And every couple of weeks, I get another case of something. One guy even sent me a box of cigars. I get peanuts. I get all kinds of things. So the guys were asking me, "Hey, how do you keep getting this stuff?" And I told them that I had an uncle that was a food distributor. So because I didn't want them to do the same thing because they'd just ruin it.
Don't take my stick.
Yeah, that's right.
So I want to pull back up, the picture. I believe this is still the day after the battle.
This is the day after the battle. So you get a good idea of what that hilltop looked like, and it was pretty massive. This hill itself was massive. So all these guys are sitting around waiting to be picked up, and because now that the enemy was gone, we had won the battle. And within a day or two, we abandoned the hill, which caused a big furor back in the States because I think Hamburger Hill was the last major battle of the war. But it caused such havoc back at home because we won and then we left. That's what irritated the American public.
Yeah.
And I think that led to President Nixon announcing troop withdrawals.
How did you come down from that battle? It was that being your first battle and your only battle up to that point, and being such a big one and really infamous one at this point.
Well, after the battle was over, one of the things that always stuck with me is that the amount of destruction on that hill, and it also it had an odor that from the cordite, from all the artillery and the ordnance that was dropped on there, but it also smelled of decaying flesh because the enemy and pieces of them were just left there. We didn't bury them. So I stood on the top of that hill and I looked down, and I realized how close I had come to being killed. And I had just gotten. I had only been in country a month. I had only been in my unit less than a month. So I made up my mind then that no matter what I do while I'm in Vietnam, I'm going to do whatever I can to survive and to help my guys survive. Because I knew the war was unpopular. I knew that there was protests going on at home. So, because of that, it was hard. It was sometimes hard to fight a victorious war when you have so many people against you back in the States. Mm-hmm. So my focus after that was just survival.
Great question, Terry. Did your guys nickname you Peaches?
No, but that would have been a great nickname.
And Bob Iyer said powdered grape was his favorite to mix in with his canteen. He did that most days with one of the tablets.
Yeah. Guys were always getting things that sent from home that they would mix in with their water. Now, if you look in that photo in the lower left-hand corner, there's a black bladder there. That's potable water. That's where we get our water from. And it would taste like rubber. It had a rubber taste to it. So yeah, you want to put some kind of powdered drink in there to take away that taste. Now that picture's on Firebase Airborne, and that was where we spent. I would say we spent the next month fixing it up because they had been overrun just before or during the Battle of Hamburger Hill. So we had to rebuild the bunker line, put wire out. We cleared a lot of the brush away from the base of the hill. So, and now, if you were in Vermont or Maine or someplace, it was beautiful there because you had a great view of the valley, but it was just a horrible place to be.
Yeah. Great question, Glenn. And it's something that I've definitely thought of in my time talking with veterans from different eras. Glenn asked, did the 101st still have or feel like the elite unit that its reputation from World War II had provided?
I would say yes, because the 101st Airborne was the last unit in Vietnam to have the subdued shoulder patch. All the other units had already changed their patches over to the subdued, like the first Cav had a yellow patch. Now that was olive drab. 101st, when I left, we still had the colorful eagle patch, with the white and the yellow beak. Yeah. So the 101st still was the last one to. They wanted the enemy to know who we were.
Go ahead, Glenn.
Yeah, were there any officers left over at this point, 23, 24 years after World War II, and perhaps even 15 or so years after the Korean War, from the old 101st that, spoke of its reputation, that tried to make newcomers like you understand what the 101st, was?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I never even thought about it. Any of those, if there were officers of that caliber, I think they were either majors or lieutenant colonels, and they were not. I didn't get to much interaction with people of that rank, although we did have one platoon sergeant that was a sergeant first class. He was a Korean War veteran, and he was very difficult to work with because he didn't like the new army. He didn't like the draftees because a lot of us didn't want to be there, and it was just a different. The music was different. The attitudes were different from what he was used to. So he was tough. He was very tough.
It'd be fascinating to sort of a PhD analysis, I suppose, to look at the 101st in, say, 1965, when it was, I think it was probably originally deployed to Vietnam about that time, versus 1969. To see if it still had the same cachet that it probably had in 65. Versus so much later in 69, when the war had deteriorated to the kind of thing you've been talking about.
So is that a question or what?
It's a comment and a question, sure.
I couldn't tell you what it was like, 5 years prior to me being there. At 65, I was a junior in high school, so I didn't pay much attention to the historical side of the military, not until I got in it, and not until I got drafted in 68.
One of the former ambassadors to Vietnam in the early to mid 60s was former General Taylor, who commanded the 101st in World War II.
Maxwell Taylor?
Yes, Maxwell. Yep. Yeah, and was Chief of Staff of the Army and Chief of Staff of the Chiefs in the early and mid 60s, and played a huge role in the involvement of America in Vietnam. And I'm sure he touted the 101st in those days as, the elite army unit.
Well, that's nice. That's good to hear. Again, my selection into the 101st was the day I landed at Cameron Bay. You, and you, 101st Airborne, and that's. So I had no connection prior to that. So
I feel like whenever you get placed into something like that elite or has that sort of history to it, that even if it's like you almost have to rise to that greatness. You have to it becomes natural, I think, for people that suddenly you're a part of this sort of historic unit and you're going to give your best.
Well, I got to say, I'm very proud of serving with the 101st Airborne. I'm very proud of the guys I served with. And one of the reasons is we didn't do anything, at least when I was there, to bring shame onto our unit or shame onto our family. We didn't rape the women. We didn't burn villages. We didn't do a lot of the things that the media had accused us of doing. I'm sure those incidents happened, but they were on a very small scale, other than the My Lai massacre. But the guys I served with, I thought were great. You always meet knuckleheads wherever you go. And there was a couple of people that I wasn't crazy about, but once we're out in the field, everybody is everyone's buddy. And you learn to trust each other and to look out for each other.
Can you give us a sense after that time in Hamburger Hill, sort of how the rest of your tour, were you up by I-Corps the whole time, and was it pretty steady throughout? Like, was there contact pretty consistently?
Actually, I would say I had probably one of the best tours that most people would love to have. After Hamburger Hill, we got involved with a few ambushes, a lot of patrolling in the Ashaw Valley, and then once the rainy season started, we were sent back to the flatlands around Camp Evans, and we didn't really see a lot of action. So I'm very thankful for that. But I also, unfortunately, I got sick a couple times. I had to spend some time in the rear. And when I was in the rear, the guys had gotten involved with some small firefights. And I luckily I missed out on that, but I should have been there. But I had a couple of illnesses that prevented me from being out in the field a few times.
Mm-hmm. Going through some of these are the pictures that you were able to take while you were there?
Yes. Now on the left is a 155 howitzer. This is on Firebase Airborne. And on the right, that's an actual fire mission. These guys were firing. Those are 105s. And so that was, we had bunkers. You can't see the bunkers, but we were just down the hillside from these guys. So we were their protection. Yeah, this is a great one. We came across the skeletal remains of an NVA soldier. And what we decided to do, your social standards kind of take a beating when you're in a situation like a war. So what we did is we took his femur bones and made his skull, and that was his helmet. We stuck it on this post, and we carried it around with us for a couple of days. But after a while, we got kind of creeped out by carrying this thing around. So we each took pictures with it, and then set his skull up on a boulder overlooking a valley, because as much as we wanted to kill the enemy, this guy was long since dead, and he was not a threat anymore. So we decided that it was not a good thing to do to carry his skull around with us.
Cobra gunship and supply helicopters coming in.
Right. Yep. The helicopter coming in was at Firebase Airborne. The gunship was outside of Camp Evans. Every once in a while, they would do some strafing runs in the flatlands around the base camp. And they would land and give us an opportunity to go over and talk to the pilots and look at the ship and at the cannons that they had on there. The picture on the left is the outside of a Huey helicopter that's flying through the Ashaw Valley. And I had the door gunner. I asked the door gunner to lean back so I could take a photo of his machine gun. And so that's what that picture is. And the one on the right is a crane helicopter bringing in a bulldozer out to a fire base that I was at the time. So the picture on the left and the picture on the right, the guy that's the same soldier, but that is a bombed out area on the left. And the picture on the right gives you an idea what some of those jungle trails are like. You can't see anything beyond there, especially in the thick jungle. So you had to be on the lookout all the time for tripwires. So the point man, he'd have his face down looking for tripwires. And the slack man right behind him he'd have to be his eyes by looking out in the distance to make sure there was no enemy activity out there. And we would find tripwires occasionally out there on a trail like that. And what that would do is if we tripped something off, it would alert the enemy that somebody or something, it could have been an animal, had tripped off that booby trap. Yeah, that's me. 21 years old. I was visiting two of my squad members got injured by a booby trap, and I was getting ready to go to Bangkok, Thailand for a 7-day leave. So I stopped in at the hospital to visit one of the guys, and that's the South China Sea out that you see behind me. That was taken in February. Now here's the plane ride home. I took a picture on the plane, and then when I got home, there was this big banner out there on the side of my parents' house, "Welcome home, Art." So it was a great feeling to come home. And that plane ride home was totally different than the ride over to Vietnam, because these guys everybody's cheering, everybody's talking, they're laughing, they're having a good time. They're watching the stewardesses, and I think the stewardesses would they would kind of hide from us because everybody was ogling them all the time, because we haven't seen we saw Vietnamese girls frequently, but you miss home, you miss girls with round eyes. So and again, those girls on the plane were very attractive.
Bob Van Bargen asked, what type of camera did you use and how did you get the film needed?
Well, there's two different cameras I had. I had a Kodak Instamatic, which was a little thing that you wind up, and those were some of the pictures, but some of the other photos were a 35 millimeter that I bought while I was over there.
And I know someone asked in the chat, your book. So you were back for, you got back. What did you get into when you got back, and how long did it take before you said you want to write the story down?
Well, I always wanted to be a writer, but when I first came home, I just wanted to put everything behind me. I didn't want to even be reminded of Vietnam. But transitioning back into civilian life was, after being in the jungle for a year, it was a little difficult. But there was guys that had also returned home that I was friendly with, and we'd get together and we'd talk. So at least I had somebody or a couple of guys that you can bounce things off of, and because they experienced a lot of the same things that I did. So you're not alone. So as far as writing the book goes, in 1987, the movie Hamburger Hill came out, and I couldn't wait to see it because I wanted to see what Hollywood did to it, or what their version was of it. So I went to see it, and some of it was good. Some of it I thought was, Hollywood. But I went over to my sister's house, and she asked me if I saw the movie. I told her I did. And she asked me what I thought of it. And my niece was there. She was 15 years old. And she says, "Well, how do you know what it was like over there?" I said, "Well, because I was in Vietnam and I was in that battle." And she looked at me and she says, "You were in Vietnam? Wow. I didn't know you were a drug addict."
Huh.
I said, "What?"
And that was in 80 or 80, 87, you said?
87 when that movie came out. So I'm thinking, this is what these kids think of Vietnam vets that were drug addicts and rapists and all these horrible things. And I said, "Well, you know what? I'm gonna write down everything I did when I was over there." And my mother saved all the letters, because I wanted the public to know what it was like. Not what it's like, not the battle stuff, but what it's like to be over there and be in that environment. So my mother had saved all the letters I wrote, so I had a good chronological order of what I was doing and where I was. I also, while I was over there, I picked up these magazines, Rendezvous with Destiny. The 101st Airborne put out these magazines, and they had a lot of dates and times, or dates and battle names and events that went on while I was over there. So I was able to have a good order of what was going on and what I was doing. And so I just wrote it all down, and I tried to be as honest as I could, what it was like, what I did. Some of the stuff my mother wasn't proud to read, because I did take advantage of some of the girls that were over there, So I never raped anybody, but I had to pay for sex like everybody else did.
Why did you name it Nonsense?
Oh, great question. So my first title was Platoon. That was the title I wanted, but then the movie came out, so I couldn't use that. So I worked at an aircraft company, and everybody knew I was working on this book. And somebody says to me, "Have you got a name yet?" I said, No. I had a bunch of names, but they were not very good. I wanted something that would really grab people. So we're sitting around the lunch table one day, and the guy says to me, "You know what? I don't know why we're even discussing a book title because your book will never get out. It doesn't make any sense that you'd even be able to get published. And the other guy goes, yeah, it's nothing but nonsense. And we all looked at each other. That's it. That's the title. Nonsense.
What did it feel like to have it completed, to have this sort of tomb of memories that you're able to hand down?
Well, actually, I was rejected over 30 times by 30 different publishers. And finally, a publisher decided that they wanted to publish the book. And once I saw it on a bookshelf at a Barnes and Noble's, I knew, I'd come full circle, and now everybody can read it. And it's done actually quite well. It's sold over 45,000 copies so far, and it's audio. It's you can get an ebook, paperback. So it came out in hardcover, but the hardcover is sold out, and they didn't print anymore. But it's done very well. It's got me on. In fact, it's got me on the History Channel. I don't know if you wanted to mention that. There was a show. There was a show 11 years ago called Vietnam in HD, and I was selected to be on that, which was that was probably one of the highest honors that a cable network would want, for me anyhow, that a cable network would put me on as one of the. I think they had 13 veterans that they interviewed for a 6-hour show. So that was pretty neat. And then shortly after that, the military channel had a now they're called American Heroes Channel. The military channel had a show called An Officer in a Movie. Lou Diamond Phillips was the interviewer, so I got to meet him, and we did a interview about the movie Hamburger Hill. So the book is obviously has gotten me places that I never thought I'd get to go.
Yeah. Mark Rosenstein asked, will it become a movie?
My book? Boy, I hope so. But
it's always nice to get optioned.
Yeah. Well, both of those television appearances were, 10, 11 years ago. And I got to rub shoulders with some producers. But, if they were going to do anything, it would have happened by now.
And can you tell me about that poster behind you?
Oh, okay. This is an original Vietnam era poster that I brought home with me, and if in the movie Hamburger Hill, right in the beginning, if anybody sees the movie, there's a spot where they were in a hot tub. A couple of guys were in a hot tub with one of the girls, and this poster was on the wall behind them. But I picked this up while I was over there, and I brought it home with me. So I just thought I'd stick it out here for a little bit of background.
As you look back on your year in Vietnam, what do you think is the most significant change that happened in you in that year?
To me personally,
Yeah.
I would say that I've become very patriotic. I've learned how to deal with little things. I don't let little things bother me because you can't do anything about them. And you can't change history. You got to look, move forward all the time. And, I learned how to work in a team. So when I finally went back to work, I was given some positions of authority, and I had some very good positions at an aircraft company because they took me back. And I think, you mature very rapidly by being in the military.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that, especially when I was younger, that, when I was in my late 20s, and I would meet people that I went to high school with who never went in the military. They only went to college, but they were so immature, or at least I felt that way, because they didn't experience anything, life and death, or anything very serious in their life. They had things probably were a lot easier for them. And I don't begrudge them that, but I just noticed the difference that in my life as compared to them.
Do you think that your original goal of writing nonsense came through, like sort of breaking down the stereotype of the Vietnam vet?
Oh, absolutely. When the book first came out, I actually even got an email from a war protester who didn't realize what it was, a woman. She said, "I can't believe that that's what you had to go through, and I was protesting against you guys when I should have been protesting against the government." Well, yeah, that's right, because most guys were just regular people like me. The country called, I went, came home. I just wanted to be left alone, go back to work, and resume my life.
Arthur, I want to thank you for joining us tonight. Glenn, go ahead. You had your hand up.
Yeah, I just curious, Arthur. I caught something you said earlier. 29 or 30 publishers had rejected it. What did the last publisher see in the book that the previous 29 did not?
Good question.
The Gulf War had either just ended or just I think the Gulf War had just ended, and some of the Vietnam veterans served in the Gulf War, or their kids served in the Gulf War. So they were asking their parents, "Hey, what was it like in Vietnam?" You know, because the Gulf War was fairly short. I think it was just a couple of 3 months or something like that, and so there was a lot of curiosity. So this one publisher, Casemate, they're from Pennsylvania. They thought that they could capitalize on that, all those questions that the younger generation was asking their parents about the Vietnam War.
I didn't know it was Casemate. Casemate is one of the best military book publishers in the country, if not the best. They really specialize in a lot of books that others turn down.
Yeah, no, I have no complaints about them. They've been very good about it, and they set me up with a bunch of radio interviews. They're actually very good. And one of the things I wanted to mention, as far as the Gulf War goes, when that ended, and the country decided to give these guys a big parade, and I'm thinking, what about us? You know, what happened? You know, we didn't get a parade. We didn't get. You know, when I came home, I was ignored at the airport, and nobody would sit next to me. So these Gulf War veterans, you know, they got a lot of appreciation that I didn't get. So I was a little jealous at first, but then the more I thought about it, I started thinking that the American people realized they made a mistake with us, you know, by treating us so poorly when we came home, and they wanted to make up for it by showing appreciation to the Gulf War vets. And but that made me think that, hey, you know, that's my homecoming. These guys and gals who served in the Gulf War, they might be getting the attention that I craved, but if it wasn't for the attention I didn't get, they wouldn't get it either. So I look at them as my homecoming. And the other good thing is they can walk around in their uniforms. We could not. When we came home from Vietnam, if you had a uniform on, people would kind of look at you funny. But today, you know, you see someone in uniform, that's my homecoming. I think it's great.
It's a great way to think about it.
Well, like I said, you can't change history. You got to look forward and look at the good that comes out of some of these things.
Absolutely. Well, I put the link to your book, Nonsense, here in the chat for anybody interested in picking it up. It's a wonderful read. I highly recommend it. Thank you for my copy, Arthur. And I also put a link to our VBC survey here into the chat. Michael, you have a question. Let me go ahead and unmute you. There you go, Michael. Go ahead.
On the question or subject of they come welcome home, I got a welcome home that you might appreciate. A guy from Afghanistan who had served in Afghanistan, hearing that I had been in Vietnam, shared with me, "Thank you for leading the way."
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I like that.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you. And thank you, Arthur, so much. Terry asked, have you been on an honor flight?
I have not. I'd like to go on one, but I'd rather see people who have serious wounds go for it before I do.
And as a sort of a side interest, I mentioned that Todd, our executive director, just got back from a tour in Vietnam. He took several Vietnam vets with him. Is it a place that you think you would return to?
No, I have no desire.
And is there any reason just because you can leave that behind you?
No, I just have no desire. I did. For some people, it's a healing process, and I think writing my book and getting that out there that pretty much did it for me. Now, who's the gentleman who just came back from Vietnam? Is he there?
Michael, who just spoke?
Yes, because a friend of mine, Jerry Augustine, just went to Vietnam. I don't know if he was part of your group. In fact, you had Jerry Augustine on a couple months ago.
It's possible. I know that name rings a bell. But I'm not sure if he just came back from Vietnam. Did he speak to you about what his experience was like?
No, he hasn't spoken to me yet.
Be interested to hear what his thoughts were. But yes, thank you, Arthur, so much for spending the time with us tonight and for sharing even a bit of your story. I feel like there's a lot of the story that we weren't able to get to, but hearing just a bit of it and sort of giving us a sense of what Nonsense is about, and it was really inspirational. Thank you for being a part of it.
I appreciate it, and I thank you, and thanks to everybody who stuck with me during this talk.
Thank you all for being here with us tonight, for being with VBC. We'll be back on Thursday night with Glenn. Glenn, you will be hosting Bob Ballard.
Dr. Bob Ballard, Thursday night, the legendary explorer. And I got to tell you, since we've been sitting here talking, I've been corresponding via email with Dr. Don Miller, and he's confirmed for Monday night, the 18th.
Okay, so two programs coming up Thursday night, Monday night. That'll be almost finishing us off for the year. We have one more in-person breakfast scheduled at Christ United Methodist Church in Bethel Park. That'll be this coming Saturday. So lots more to look forward to with VBC, and definitely lots more to look forward to in the coming year. Thank you all for being here tonight, and we'll talk to you all soon. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.